Hello, everyone. Welcome to what will most likely be the final roleplay Q&A. I'm recording this for YouTube, so if you're watching here live on Twitch, some of this will be kind of a rehash of what was said in yesterday's Twitter statement. If you haven't seen that yet, I'm sure Reggie will include it down in the description of the video. Or if you're watching this on Patreon, because I think I'm going to post it there as well, you can read the full statement down below. Essentially, we are ending any future productions for roleplay. Let me get some background music here so it sounds a little bit less dramatic. Um, Echoes of Eternity is still going to be happening every Thursday until that show is done, whatever that may be. It's up to Reggie. It's up to Jesse and the crew. I've not put any, rules or restrictions on them. They can go as long as they'd like. And that'll fill kind of that Thursday night time slot here on the channel. But apart from that, that's kind of the gist of it. I would say check out the statement, as it's much more eloquently stated, and less the minds of a rambling person and more the minds of a rambling writer. I don't know. Essentially, the biggest reasons for what occurred is Adam is kind of stepping away from the streaming world and moving forward with the show and replacing Adam and essentially like training, so to speak, someone to kind of fill Adam's role is a monumental task, one that I don't necessarily have the energy / time for unless I were to take a backseat on some other stuff in terms of the everyday stuff here on the show. So we're kind of shutting down operation. I understand if you see that as kind of the easy way out. That's totally your prerogative. No issues or no qualms about that. But in doing so, we wanted to kind of do a final Q&A as we have a whole bunch of questions that were submitted from yesterday, and we'll kind of go through those in real time. I won't be answering any questions from chat. I wanted to pay attention to these questions in particular that were submitted over the past 24 hours, essentially 23 hours, I guess, from the announcement. I do have two other points that are updates from the response or from the statement yesterday. I had a bunch of people submit questions and a bunch of people tweet me and email me asking about merchandise. And I'll also kind of talk a little bit about the timeline of events because I do want to apologize for how long it took to kind of announce this. In terms of merchandise, we removed all of the Yeti merchandise as kind of a leading up to this process. There's a lot of merch left over. The way that Yeti does their merch is that they create it first. It's not made to order. And so essentially they kind of just had a ton of stuff sitting in their warehouse and needed to kind of clean inventory. So we worked it out between the two of us and, both sides are happy with how that went. But essentially the culmination of that is that there is no merch anymore. It does not exist in terms of the physical merch. We might, I reached out to them yesterday to see if they'd gotten rid of it already, to see if we could put some of it up for, super discounted where I wouldn't take a cut or anything like that. And they said that they had already gotten rid of it. So I'm not sure what we'll do there to kind of satiate a lot of the demand for people wanting to grab last minute merch. We could put out, some of those designs, I guess, if people wanted to get it printed on a shirt of their own. That might be a way. I haven't wrapped my head around it too much in terms of the best ways to handle that. We did get kind of a last minute smattering of the different stuff that was available in terms of the caps and a couple of the shirts, but they were very small numbers. So it's not something where I can kind of ship those out to everyone that was wanting one. So we'll see. It might be the case where I kind of put those documents out so that they could take it to, wherever you go to get shirts made. I think that's a pretty easy found place and they can kind of put that to wherever they want, whether it's a shirt or it's a poster. But that's all very fluid thinking, and we'll see what that actually culminates into. I'll probably have some more thoughts on that over the next week or two because I did see and note a lot of people that were wanting that merch. In terms of the timeline for all this, so the situation with Adam happened at the beginning of April, and that's kind of when we came out and talked about that. and the Q&A before this. I think on like the 2nd and the 5th, somewhere in those dates is when all this happened. And Adam reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to take some time off and kind of figure out what all this looks like for me, and also do a bunch of self-reflecting. And he kind of talked about that in his statement. And it wasn't until I think early May, the 2nd or 1st week of May, maybe like the 8th or something like that, where he came to me and said, hey, I'm going to be stepping away from streaming. I apologize if this puts you in a bad spot with roleplay, but I think this is the right choice for me. And I said, all right, I understand. And then I was kind of left with, well, what do I do moving forward? What do we do moving forward? So I spent the better part of, I think, about 2 weeks. I would say probably like the week of the 18th is when I kind of came to the decision that we'd be closing up shop. And then spent the time between the first and then, figuring out what that looked like, and figuring out all the steps that needed to be taken to, close up shop, which there was a lot of, from a contractual standpoint, from what does Patreon look like standpoint, how am I going to handle the studio, which I still don't have an answer for, in terms of all that equipment. What do we do with that? From a business perspective, like what does that look like? And I still don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming from a business perspective that this will be somewhat of a blow, monetarily, but I think the stress involved with kind of keeping the show running and all that type of stuff, far, far outweighs the like monetary aspect of it from a business point of view. So I'm happy with my decision, and I think it's the right decision for me. And I think in a situation like this, that's the best that I can do. Obviously, people that are super huge fans of the show, I know that that's not something that they're super into. In terms of what it means, like, is this the end of all this stuff? For now, yeah. I can't see the future. I don't know what a year from now the channel looks like. I don't know what 2 years from now the channel looks like. I do know that I don't have any interest in doing any tabletop content myself, apart from Echoes, which is kind of still going. And I don't have any interest at the moment in playing in any tabletop content, but that might change, 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever. I can't see the future, and I don't know what that looks like. I will say that luckily there's a billion shows that you can watch. Some I could even recommend to you. Table Story, great stuff over there. I know that Steven does a show and has done a show with Jesse and Bronze and Britt, and I forget who the fourth person of this show is, called the Sunfall Cycle. Definitely check that out. I think that's Wednesdays is when that airs. If you're watching on Twitch, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of shows being linked or talked about in chat that you could check out for all that. Neil Koibu is still doing a ton of shows. I think his entire channel is actually devoted to D&D still. I'd check out all that stuff. I know a bunch of like roleplay. I don't want to say pillars, but I can't think of a better word right now. People that have been on roleplay a lot have been popping up on a channel called Arcadium or Arcadum. You can Google on that stuff. Strip-In and Dodger and Jesse and a bunch of folks like that. And then, like I said, Table Story. I think Zeke and Elspeth are involved in that. I think Table Story is also doing some stuff with Havana and a couple members of some recent one-shots. They have a bunch of shows over there. There's a bunch of content out there to watch. So I would say, if you are removing your sub from the channel because you don't want to watch any other content, go check out those guys. Drop your Prime sub there, or your normal $5 of monthly content on some of those channels for sure. Unexpectables on Taka's channel is Octopimp. Also, what's going on, Octo? And the chat is pointing out. There is definitely a surplus when it comes to content, tabletop content on the internet. So just because we're not doing it doesn't mean that your fascination and interest in tabletop content has to go away. Definitely seek out some of those other shows. What was the other thing? Oh, and probably the least exciting and silliest ramification of all this. You might know that the logo currently has a D20 attached to it right here in the back. And that's rather silly to have when you're no longer playing yeah. So we're going to be rebranding the channel and that stuff in the future. That's not something that's done overnight. That's something that I kind of contacted someone about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but we wanted to get Whiskey Sweet off the ground, and it's a much easier designed concept than kind of a full-on brand and logo swap. So yeah, we'll be changing that in the future. We'll get rid of the D20, and I don't know. Maybe it'll just be itmeJP happy on a cupcake. But it's not going to be that. So we'll figure that out and update it accordingly when we have it. We're not putting itmeJP. I shouldn't have said that. That's the type of thing where everyone in chat was very excited. They should not be. I said this was going to be about a 30-minute Q&A, and we're already 12 minutes in of me rambling, so it might be a little bit longer. We'll see how that goes. Because there are a lot of questions, and I do want to try and get to the majority of them. So we'll just kind of move. Some of these I might have already answered already, but I want to make sure that we answer them to the best of my ability. So there are no names attached to this. I want people to be able to, submit a question anonymously or anything like that. So are you moving away entirely from any kind of tabletop RPG content aside from EOE continuing for the foreseeable future, or is there a possibility of you hosting or participating in a tabletop RPG show, just not under the Roleplay brand? Yes, we're moving away from it entirely, at least for now. I'm not sure, again, what the future holds. I can't tell you what the world's going to look like in 6 months, let alone a month, really, with current events. But yeah, we are closing up shop. We're putting the... Ollie's upset. He doesn't want to see it, and he's over there barking. I don't know what I was going to say. Putting the nail in the door or something. I don't know what that is. And I would say don't cling on the for now. Also, don't... Coming into the channel and asking, hey, are you going to do any tabletop content will only set yourself up for a negative response. Ollie, are you serious? This is a very important message, and you're acting like a fool, Ollie. You're just barking. Come on, man. Sorry. So yeah, we're moving away from tabletop RPG content. With the end of roleplay, will you, JP, be looking to join the cast of any other RPG shows on Twitch? Not in the immediate future, and not for some time. Kind of the same answer for the first one. Also, with 7 years of roleplay, I think that would just feel weird. Like being on another, and that's totally a me thing. But that will be a weird, the first whatever that is will be a weird thing for me to be on another show. And that's mostly because we've done 7 years of shows on the channel and all that type of stuff. But I can imagine that feeling weird. Do you know if any of the cast members of Court of Swords are considering more role-playing in any other campaigns? Would you consider playing on anyone else's show? Answered the other question already. The first question, I think Zeke's on a couple of shows already. I'm not sure what Dan or Max have planned. And then, of course, if you didn't read Adam's statement, I would also go read his statement as well. You can find it on his Twitter. But yeah, maybe Dan will do, some of the one shots on, or continue some of that world of his one shots on his own channel. I don't know. He's happy to have the graphics if he wants them. When roleplay has content happen on the itmeJP? Okay, already answered that. A lot of those questions. The pre-show got its name from the beginning of the roleplay episodes where the cast would just shoot the shit. Now that roleplay has ended, will you still call it the pre-show? Yeah, I think it's kind of like an homage to where that started, and I think if we remove that, that's not as fun. I do understand it's quite odd to watch a show called the pre-show, but you spelled it wrong. So maybe spell it right, and maybe it won't be awkward. Yes, we're going to keep the name the pre-show. There's no dash, and the S is lowercase. It's just the pre-show, one word. No question. Just wanted to say thanks, and that roleplay will be sorely missed. All the best to you and to whoever's been a part of your shows. Thank you. Just wondering if your Twitch VODs will still be behind a sub wall, or if you will be changing that at some point. I don't know. The channel's been in this sub wall world. Really one of, handful of channels on Twitch. I think the only one that comes to mind is Day 9. And I think for me, business-wise, there's a little bit of uncertainty in terms of what the future looks like to begin with. And if I were to dash any more uncertainty there, I'm not sure what that would look like. So might be something that we revisit, after I kind of see the ramifications of this 2 or 3 months down the line. We still do a lot of show-based content on the channel with things like Drop Frames and Pre-Show and Whiskey Sweet and any other stuff that we decide to do from now on. So in some sense, that model kind of works for that. But in other cases, it does not. We have gotten much better about posting our VODs and gameplay VODs specifically on the YouTube channel. So if people want to watch that, they can, although they're a little bit lagged behind. But not necessarily saying that you should, but if you do want to watch that stuff and you drop by chat and say, hey, when is X content going to be uploaded to YouTube? Most of the time you'll get gifted a sub, whether it's from me or another nice member of the community. It usually happens. So that's kind of where we're at with that. What is your favorite/least favorite roleplay show you ran, and why, of course? I don't know if we'll do least favorite. I don't want like a negative spin to come out of this. In terms of my favorite show that we ran, I think that there's something, what's the word? There's something divined, or that it was supposed to happen this way, with having die-kea 3 be the final show that we produced. Because really, I mean, if you're going out, you might as well have like the absolute worst be the one that does you in. I knew at the time of that show airing that it was going to be the last. And there was a part of me that was like, maybe I should be on this show, but I don't know if I would have been able to. I didn't want that show to be kind of in the shadow of like, oh, it's the final roleplay show, right? So that's why we kind of waited on that announcement. Because I think die-kea needs to exist on its own to be fully appreciated. And there's something magical. I kind of like that word. For that being the last show that we produced. In terms of like, what is my favorite show that we ran in general? I think Court of Swords was up there. It was definitely the one that like, week after week, there was no stress in it. There was no, whatever. We just kind of did the show and came together as a group and it was always fun. So that was a lot of fun. It's definitely one that, we did most recently. So I think that might be the case of it's the most recent show. So that's the one that comes to mind first. But we had a lot of, I enjoyed a lot of the different shows that we ran. Swan Song, Dark Heresy, the original show. They're all good. And definitely something that I'll kind of always look back fondly on for that stuff. As someone who's planning to buy merch and had put it off for a while, will there be any kind of limited run as to give people like me a chance before it's all gone forever? Unfortunately, it's already all gone forever. Like I said, I'll look into possibly publishing those templates so that if you do want to try and get the shirt made yourself via something, I wouldn't say a Teespring because I don't want people to sell it. That's the conundrum, so to speak. So I don't know. We'll look into that and I'll figure out the best thing possible. Maybe I myself might just run it on Teespring for a certain amount of time. Sorry, there's a dog jumping on a kid and I have to make sure that the dog doesn't push the kid over and that the kid doesn't push the dog over. It's in my peripheral right now. A longer message from Sean. And I only say that so that you know that I've read this message in full. Okay, here's some questions. What does this mean for you personally? Are you done playing D&D style games or are you just done for now? I think it would be safe to say done playing D&D style games for your own sake. If you grasp on to the for now, that would be the wrong message that I would want to send out. Are you at all interested in playing in other Friends campaigns or opportunity arises? Maybe down the line. We'll see. Thank you for the kind words there at the end. And also, he says, P.S. Sorry about the pink boots. Another question, is this the definite ending to roleplay? Are you going to keep the door for new possibilities? Answer that. I want to know if Elspeth will continue to show up on Drop Frames or also the pre-show. She's been a nice addition to E3 and things like that because she's so into Nintendo. It'd be a shame to not have her around for Nintendo stuff anymore. Yeah, we actually have, I've been in constant contact with Elspeth throughout kind of all this. We definitely want to have her on Drop Frames. It didn't feel necessarily like the proper timing, which she kind of brought into light. We were down to have her on a couple times already, but she didn't want to kind of put a spotlight on the situation, so opted to wait. But we'll definitely have her on either an episode of or both of Drop Frames in the pre-show. And that kind of goes for, most of the people we've been working with, if not all the people we've been working with recently. It's nice to have kind of a roster that we do for those type of shows. Roleplay's been a big part of my life since the OG series 7 years ago. Is this really the end for itmeJP produced roleplay content? Yes. Someone says, how are you doing? Are you okay? That's probably Aaron. Yeah, I'm doing all right. I think I kind of went through this process off stream like 2 weeks ago or kind of when I was going through all this. So if I seem a little bit, not of the emotional state that you would expect someone to be at, it's because I've kind of mentally dealt with this, before we announced it. So then I'm usually just very stonewalled to begin with. So, you mentioned that Echoes will continue. Will there be any new roleplay shows without the roleplay moniker? Probably not. Let's just make hard calls there. No. Will there be any final merch sales before everything's gone? Nope. Answered that. You have a favorite moment from either the shows themselves or some production aspect behind the scenes of roleplay? I mean, there's a lot there. I think you can kind of throw a shoot a snake in a barrel. Is that a saying? Fish in a barrel? I think fish in a barrel is this. You can fish in a barrel. I'm still not good with my sayings. There's a ton there. I think the moment from Blades with Anne and Zeke was definitely from a producer / viewer aspect, was a lot of fun to watch. I think there's a handful of scenes from Court of Swords where things just kind of happened seemingly out of nowhere. that I'll probably keep with me for a while. I mean, I think even like the earlier, the first campaign, Legacy or whatever we called it, definitely has a bunch of different moments from it. Any of the animated stuff that we did was a lot of fun. Sorry, I had to make sure the song wasn't. I wasn't about to get DMCA'd for this as I looked over. Yeah, there's a lot. I think everyone that has been watching or has watched the shows can kind of name something of their own. So, do you have any other roleplay channels to recommend? I need my fix. Thanks for everything. Yeah, we kind of did it earlier, but I have no issue doing it twice in case people are skipping around the VOD or just join the channel. Steven does a show with Jesse and Bronze and Britt and Chad. Who's the fourth? This is the second time who's on the Sunfall? Who's the fourth person in the Sunfall? Eric. Okay, I'm not familiar with Eric, but Eric is the fourth person there on the Sunfall cycle. I think that's on Wednesdays. I would assume if you follow Jesse or Britt or any of those people, Steven, they'll tweet about that. Table Story definitely has a bunch of content over there. We did a one shot with Pumpkinberry, who I think is a GM over there, as well as a bunch of other people. That's where Zeke and I think Elspeth actively play in some fashion. Arcadum, I think, also has a bunch of like roleplay alumni. That would have been a great word to use the first go around at this. Dodger and Strippin and them play over there. I think a bunch of other streamers as well. There's a bunch for sure. I would say if you're at all curious to just ask someone in the community, as they would probably know more about this stuff than me. But yeah, those are the ones that I'll recommend. And also anything Neil does. Neil does so many shows, it's hard to keep track of them. I think he actually does more shows than we did at our peak on like a weekly schedule. And that's still over at Koibu on Twitch. The world of Court of Swords is amazing, and 100% selfishly, I am sad to not have closure for the story and the character's goals. As a capstone to a great series, would you consider creating an epilogue post, just text, that the cast could contribute to? I necessarily can't speak for the whole cast, but I know for myself, a lot of the stories never were like fleshed out. We never approached Court of Swords. I never approached, I shouldn't say we. I never approached Court of Swords with like an end story. I think we were just getting to that point when we were going to have to start thinking about that. But I think if we were to do anything like epilogue-y, it would not be in nature of the show, which was kind of, making it up as we go along. That's I can only speak for myself there. There was 4 other members of that show. I would say reach out to them if they have, end goals for their character. I know, Max often thought about his character a lot with Berg, so he might have something. I don't necessarily do though. I've been a sub for Patreon, but I never had a chance for money to buy any merch. Oh, we talked about merch. What would you do differently if you started roleplay now? I've actually thought about this for a while, and in some cases, I kind of have 2 different answers for this. If I were starting roleplay now, not having learned what I did with roleplay, I don't necessarily think that I would do anything differently, because then I wouldn't have learned the things that I've learned over the past 7 years because of roleplay. And that's both as a person and, in terms of running a business. I think communication is probably like the number one thing in all of that. In general, I think communication is probably like the tip top of everyday interaction. And if there's anything that I think people should work on, including myself, it is communication. And I think some of the lessons that I learned from roleplay have to do with communication and how to do it right. And I wouldn't actually learn those unless I failed to begin with, unfortunately. In terms of answering it, if I knew everything that I did today, how would I do it differently? It'd probably be its own channel. And, to be honest, you probably wouldn't do a tabletop show or like a franchise. I think a lot of the success of roleplay over the years was because we were one of the first, not because we were one of the best. And I think, you know, in a lot of cases on the internet, first trumps best. And so I don't know if like starting a D&D franchise or a D&D show these days is like a smart business move to begin with. So I don't know if we would actually do it all over again. And you know, on June 9th. Yeah, I just noticed the date 6/9/2020. Nice. But yeah, that's kind of my own view of it. But yeah, I learned a lot from roleplay, and I think if I were to like do it differently, I wouldn't fail the ways that I failed, and I wouldn't learn the things that I learned, both as a person and as a business. Will the Patreon MP3 RSS feeds be updated for echoes going on, and will they still remain active and later on, kind of as an archive? Thanks for all the great content throughout the years. Yes, but I will say that Echoes has its own like iTunes feed. And I think it's going to remain the only one that has an iTunes feed. Paying for 5 different hosts right now, when it comes to podcast is a lot. And so we'll probably take Far Verona and Court of Swords down. And then, sorry, I have gum in my mouth. My gum is splitting. All right, there we go. I didn't want it in my teeth. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so we'll probably leave pre-show drop frames and echoes on iTunes. But yeah, there won't be anything new coming to Patreon. And one of the things that I want to try to do, and I don't know how or what it's going to look like, is trying to get all of the content off of Patreon, so that we can just kind of have like a thing, a file or something, so that we can actually like close the Patreon, but not lose any of the actual content in terms of the videos and post and all that stuff. So it's definitely a project that I have to figure out moving forward, with the main reason being the way that the Patreon works as a platform is you have to manually go into Patreon and say, and click a button essentially. Although I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. But basically you have to go in and say like, hey, I want to skip this month's charges. There's no way to just like deactivate a Patreon while still keeping everything running. And in fact, they actually still, you know, have a upkeep fee for kind of everything there. So we're trying to figure out the best way to do all that while still retaining all the content, so that stuff isn't lost for anyone that wants to watch it down the line. You know, if they run into a YouTube VOD or something like that, and, you know, hear the words, go check out the Patreon content. They can find that without going to patreon.com/roleplay and finding a page that doesn't exist. So we'll see how that goes. Another question about merch. Thanks for letting us be a part of this journey, JP. What's the best way we can honor the legacy of the stories roleplay is told? I have no idea. I guess watch them. Yeah, I'm not sure what, how does one honor dumb internet videos? I don't know. Watch the VODs on YouTube, I guess. Can there be one last show other than Echoes of Eternity? Of course, the only option for a final show would be die-kea 4. No, we're going to do Echoes, and then that'll probably be it for the foreseeable future. Sorry for the door slams. Hey, JP and all the wonderful people associated with roleplay. No questions. Just thank you for everything. Thank you. So you guys start with esports. Do you think you might dive back into that world now? No. Esports is a much bigger place than it was when I started, and even a, I mean, a ginormous place from when I started in it 10 years ago, or whenever that was. And even when I left, it's a much ginormous landscape. I think there's much better people creating much better content in that world. And I don't necessarily have the need to kind of jump back into it. I don't even watch that much like esports content these days. The most interaction I do with esports is poking fun at the Overwatch League and reading Sir Scoots' tweets about different nonsense in esports. So yeah. Thanks for all the great moments. I understand you decided to end roleplay for now, but I'm wondering if you consider going on about other people's show, if there's some way you can imagine. Oh, I already answered that. Another merch question. A lot of hypothetical stuff, like if X and Y would roleplay continue type situation. I don't necessarily think that that's a conversation I want to contribute to or add to, for a myriad of different reasons. Kind of just getting into a lot of these are no longer questions, just statements and people saying thanks. Will you be starting a Patreon to support your ongoing content, or will I need to sub on Twitch? I mean, you don't need to do anything. Simply watching the content is far more than I could ever ask for. I won't be starting a new Patreon to support the ongoing content. I think Patreon existed for roleplay, and it worked for what we wanted to do with that. I think in a lot of cases, I learned a lot about kind of crowd-funded projects like that, and the idea of like, hey, it's awesome when you can crowd fund things and you could, support people that you can support otherwise in terms of paying them and things like that. But at the same time, I think there is some sense of like self-imposed guilt that comes with that. Every month when you get like a certain dollar amount sent to you and it's like, hey, here's some money. When was the last time you did a live show? And so if I were to ever do any like future crowdfunding, it would probably be something like a Kickstarter and not like an ongoing thing. Because the ongoing thing, I think, for my purposes, creates guilt. Whereas if it was just like, hey, here's the thing to kickstart if you want to get this item. Cool, you got the item? Great. Transaction over. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Patreon. Where was I? Oh, here's the best question I've gotten all day. I think we're reaching the bottom of the barrel. Do you squeeze toothpaste from the end or the middle? I think I squeeze toothpaste however I can get toothpaste. I'm not one of those weirdos that like rolls the toothpaste up. If you walk into a bathroom and you see the toothpaste has been rolled up to get the maximum amount, get out. Aaron says he's a wild man. It's awful. Yeah, let me tell you. That's the most efficient way. We don't even have toothpaste that you can roll up. It's like plastic toothpaste things that it's not foil, so it doesn't retain shape. You know? He squeezes in the middle. Yeah. Because what it's like, wow. Aaron's really upset about this. Here's the thing. You get your toothbrush and you look at it and you think, I just need some toothpaste. So then you look, and in our case, it's you look and find the last place that Aaron left it because it's always in a different place. And then after I go on the newest National Treasure movie to find said toothpaste, and I come back with Nicolas Cage and says, here you go, man. The What are they called? Like the Illuminati, but the old Illuminati. Help me out here, chat. The Knights Templar. We got the gold and your toothpaste. I say thank you. And then I just fucking squeeze some toothpaste on there. There you go. That's a good question, JP. Why are your shirts on the counter? Because we have a dog. You know? Anyways, let's move on. Sorry, some of these are long. Hello, I can never read. Edok Dishi here. Will Court of Swords now also just end? Or is there a possibility that either final episode and or you, Adam, and you, and not the two future release of Court of Swords book people can read, explore /UAE. I don't know what that is. In their own D&D. We had often talked about that, but I think all that's kind of done with roleplay closing up. Here's a thing I will talk about that my agent might not be into me talking about, but I don't necessarily think it's going to happen. So if you remember, if you've watched the channel in the past, I don't know, maybe it was 3 months ago or 2 months ago, I got a call or a text where I said that I would one day talk about it. And I was very excited about it. I think it was an email. There was a meeting that we never had. Mostly because I guess I'm going to name this person. I guess. There was a meeting that was arranged that we were going to have for a comic book, with Court of Swords being the inspiration, with Todd McFarlane. And the meeting never happened. I don't think it will happen now that we're kind of done, but it was definitely a, like one of those moments where I was just kind of like, what the fuck is going on? So that was a cool thing. And in many cases, I should kind of thank the community for getting us to that point, but yeah, that would have been kind of a fun thing to have, like a Image Comics drawn Berg, you know? Would have been cool. Anyways, kind of out. Unless he wants to. I don't even know how that would work now, but yeah, it was pretty crazy. And who knows? Maybe that conversation will still happen, and I just made it not happen. I figured I'd share because I said that I would one day, and now seems like an apt time. If new roleplay content is no longer planned for the channel, what's your plan for Twitch for the future in terms of content you're going to produce? I think it's a twofold answer. In terms of the immediate future, we've started 2 shows, both of which were started due to not knowing. We just they were not started in lieu of roleplay. They were started because we just wanted to do them, with the pre-show and Whiskey Sweet, which is the cooking show that me and Erin do. I hope, but if she's still not upset about the toothpaste stuff, we'll have another episode on the 27th or the 4th, maybe. But those are, I enjoy doing those. I think we both enjoy doing Whiskey Sweet. We had a pre-show yesterday. Jerry and Anna and Bronze were on, and I very much enjoy the pre-show for the idea of kind of having a conversation about, I feel like we have meaningful conversations on that show about things that we don't normally talk about on the channel. And that type of stuff is important. Maybe not the most sought out content, but I still have fun with them nonetheless. And it's definitely a type of show where we can have people on just to chat and not necessarily like, hey, do you want to come on a show and play D&D? It's, hey, do you want to come on a show and just talk? And so that's fun. I enjoy that show for its simplicity and the types of conversations that we can just have with cool people. So that's the pre-show. Then Whiskey Sweet. I enjoy baking. What the hell is I enjoy baking with Aaron. We kind of both finished up that first show we did on our original wedding date, and we're just, super into it. We saw that chat enjoyed it, and we thought, can we turn this into something more? And that's kind of where we're at with Whiskey Sweet. In terms of like new stuff, I don't know. I've spent a little bit of time thinking about like what the future looks like in terms of new stuff. And I haven't like centered in on one thing yet. Sorry, all these doing weird stuff. But I'm very excited for the future. We've kind of been sitting on this announcement for about 2 weeks, and I didn't necessarily know what it was going to look like and kind of how it was all going to occur, and now that we're kind of on the other side, so to speak, I'm pretty excited for the future, for whatever that looks like. And the idea of creating something new and jumping into the unknown, kind of as a creator, is something that hasn't happened for a very long time, at least with the amount of space that we have to fill, in my mental landscape of what we do here on the channel. It's pretty exciting. So I don't know what that's going to be. Hopefully it's a big hit and it's not some terrible idea that turns into a big hit. Actually, I kind of hope it is a terrible idea that turns into a big hit. That'd be the best case scenario. Maybe I'll just do a show. All right. Maybe I become a Snapchatter. I get in the pockets of China and become a Snapchatter. Okay. And maybe the entire Snapchat show that's TikTok. Sorry, TikTok. Let's change the brand. We haven't started anything yet. So maybe I become a TikToker, because they're owned by China, or they are China, whatever that news was. And maybe I just go around asking people how they use their toothpaste. And that's it. It's just a 5-second show. Hey, where do you push your toothpaste from? And they can either go like 2 or 3, they can tell you the end. They can say, what do you mean? I just get toothpaste, which is usually the middle. Or 3, they can just give me a really weird look as if that's not an important question at all. Might turn into something new. A lot of them are kind of different ways of, different ways to ask if we're going to do more stuff in terms of tabletop. Bunch of questions on VODs, which we answered. Bunch of questions on doing shows with different DMs, which was covered in the statement. Who owns the Court of Swords setting? Would Adam be able to produce content in that setting? Could others? Technically, I guess the role play, technically Critical Fail Productions has the IP for Court of Swords. If the question goes on, would Adam be able to make content in that setting? Yeah, if he wants to. I think if anyone wants to make any content in any of the role play worlds, I don't see why not. Okay. I've never seen tabletop role-playing show as TT/RP. I've always seen it as TTRPG. Is that normal? What happens when you Google this? Wait, that usually stands for take the red pill. I don't think you should use TT/RP. People are going to get the wrong message. Don't use, type out TTRPG, whoever asked that question. People might get the wrong idea. Yeah. And yeah, that's kind of the questions. those are all the questions we got. So, yeah. I don't know if there's really anything else to cover or say. I did one of the nice things about yesterday's statement is there was an overwhelming amount of positive messages and people saying, I think kind of the most impactful aspect of yesterday's statement in terms of the response was there were so many people that stated that, they started playing D&D or some type of tabletop game because of roleplay. And I think in the tabletop RPG space, that's kind of like the best sentiment that you can get from fans. And so that's really awesome. I made sure to, or I hope that the other people that are associated with the shows saw all of that when they were posting their different messages yesterday. So that's really nice. I saw a bunch of, 80-month, 60 to 80-month subs over the past 24 hours now, because we posted yesterday at 2. Dropping their last sub because they were here for kind of role play. And, it's sad to see a bunch of longtime subs leave like that, but I get it. I totally get it. Hopefully you guys are going to be dropping those subs over on other channels like the ones I mentioned before and starting up a new fandom over there. And if not, that's cool too. But yeah, we're still going to keep on keeping on. So that is kind of that. Oh, this is kind of a downer of a song to end on. This is like a Zach Braff film. Zach Braff? Something like that? What's his name? The guy from Scrubs. The Scrubs man. Is it Braff? It's Zach Braff. What dumb... His last name is Braff. Huh. What a silly name. Anyways, this is like a bad indie Zach Braff film here with this song. By the way, Drummer Boy, shout out to him, created this song. As I just said, it's a bad Zach Braff indie film. It was more on the lines of the indie film, but if this song was included in a Drummer Boy, it'd be a good one. Saved. We're still going to continue working with Drummer Boy. We have a bunch of other show content that we're going to try and find mostly Echoes of Eternity right now is what he'll be making songs with us for. As he's been doing the character music for that. But Drummer Boy has been with us for a very long time. In fact, we can actually... Do I have that song loaded up? I think I would have to Google it. So the first song that Drummer Boy, and I think we'll end on this. Chat likes a sappy end. We'll give him a sappy end. The first song that Drummer Boy ever made for us was actually a song from the very first roleplay show. And it happened from the very first death on that campaign, which was for my dumbass in the character Tuttigub for a song called Hero of Willowbrook. So we'll end on that. I'll let the song play, and then we'll be back and we'll continue our normal show. We're going to check out that Destiny stuff and then probably jump back into Persona. Tomorrow we got Drop Frames. DJ Knight's going to be joining us on that. Thursday we're covering that PlayStation press event. That's at 4 Eastern, I think. Friday we're starting Last of Us. Last of Us 1. Probably going to finish that up on Sunday or Monday. Saturday we have those press conferences from the PC Gaming Show and the Guerrilla Interactive and one other conference. We got a whole bunch of content. I would say look at the schedule if you want to know more. But that's that for sure. We're done. Thanks everyone for watching Roleplay over the past 7 years and change. I appreciate that. I'm gonna go get some water and we're going to let this VOD wrap up. So thank you guys. If you're watching on Twitch, we'll see you soon. If we're watching on YouTube, we hope to see you back here soon. We're out. Bye.